yeah, those are insane numbers. If you're not reacting to those just like, how did he do those things? I don't know what planet you're from, because in the modern NFL, those are not numbers that a running back gets pretty often.
You're listening to Let's Talk Fantasy Football, where men of fantasy genius have realized, hey guys, we don't need real football skills to dominate on the fantasy field. Yeah! So slap on your pads and grab your helmet. Shit's about to get real.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Let's Talk Fantasy Football. I am your host, Nick Schreck, and joining me tonight is, once again, the fan favorite, the smartest guy we've got, and he is still here in New Jersey, guys, believe it or not. Graced us with his presence once again, the one, the only Nick Walsh. Walsh, we're here to talk NFC West. What is going on?
Not much, dude. I'm ready to continue with the NFC West. It's a super interesting division, honestly. I feel like I've said that about a lot of the divisions that we've covered, but I had a really good time researching the NFC West, so I'm pumped to be back here, ready to rock and roll. What's going on with you, dude?
Not much, man. I'm still kind of reeling, I think, from the last podcast with my love for the 49ers and the expectations there, which I think is a great thing for 49er fans and, you know, fantasy just in general. And I think the division preview, as we kind of broke it out, is a tale of two halves, because I think this part of the division is not going to be as great or as sexy as maybe the first half was. But we'll see. We'll let the fans decide. You know, that's what we're here for, Walsh.
Hell yeah.
We're going to keep the fans happy. It's just people helping people, man. You know, we're living the dream. But first, Walsh, before we can live that dream, we're going to give a shout out to Auction Draft. They are the best site for running your fantasy football auction league in 2018. You can sign up now by going to letstalkfantasyfootball.com/auction draft. Use the promo code LTFF, and James and the staff over there is going to give you guys 50% off your league for 2018, guys. You can play in short 5-week seasons, or you can play season long. It is literally the ultimate experience for auction drafting, and you guys are going to love it when we do our draft on there for you to hear and break down. And we're excited for what is to come, because it's July, mid-July really, and we're not that far, Walsh, from really kicking things off in the football world.
No, not at all. We got camps coming up. We got important things coming. I mean, hell, my first draft, I want to say on the calendar is about a month from today, maybe, or is that not a Friday? No, it is a Friday. All right, yeah, my first draft is like a month and 1 day from today. So I really gotta like pick my stuff up here. I gotta be serious, you know?
Yeah, man, we're getting into the thick of it. You know, people are here. They're trying to get their things straight, because if we're that close to draft day, that means they're that close to draft day.
Exactly.
You know, and Walsh, for us we need to pick it up, because we're also in the running for a podcast award, courtesy of podcastawards.com. And we are hoping you guys are willing to go out there and nominate us. And whether you love us or hate us, again, perfect punishment would be for us to have to accept that award. And we'll make sure the DON goes and accepts that award. You guys are going to podcastawards.com. You're going to register for free right there on the page. Click on nominations, and you can look for Let's Talk Fantasy Football. We're in the sports category, and we're in, I think, the best in show is the category. So love us, hate us, vote for us. That's our campaign. Let's Talk Fantasy Football 2018. But Walsh, here we go. Let's start with the Rams, and we'll start at the QB position. Jared Goff, QB number 15, going off with the first pick in the 11th round. And before we even dive into any analysis on him, I want to throw Ed's question of the week out there. It's actually a hell of a way to kick off the podcast, and I think the timing's perfect. He says, if you leave your draft with Jared Goff as your only QB, are you cool with that? And I think let's talk that and analysis now on Jared Goff.
So if I'm leaving the draft with Goff only, I think it really depends on my league itself. So if I have a league where I know that I can pick up a different quarterback to stream every week, fine. The Rams play the Raiders week 1. I'll start Jared Goff week 1. That's a good streaming matchup. But if you're in the sort of league where maybe people draft 2 quarterbacks, it's a 12-team league, everyone kind of loads up on them, I want someone else to play based on matchups with Jared Goff. So I'm not comfortable leaving the draft and saying I am going to start Jared Goff every single week of this season. I think that's an extremely bad move. Last year, he was quarterback 14 at the end of the year. And I think he works kind of fine in the spot that he's being drafted. But that defense is good, and they're going to try and give Gurley the ball as much as they can. So that in itself just sort of limits his ceiling and what he can really do. Again, if you think they're going to be in a close-ish, high-scoring matchup, like I think they'll be week 1 against the Raiders, play him. Absolutely. He should be in every starting lineup week 1. It's a great matchup. But weeks after that, where maybe they're a big favorite or you think they'll get up big early, that's not the right time to be playing Jared Goff.
I completely agree. I think that's a slam dunk analysis. I think it's super, super hitting the nail on the head, Walsh. And I think if people want to see a slam dunk in real life, they should check out Nick Walsh's Instagram. Look at his most recent upload, and that video is going to be exactly what you just heard in word form. You're just going to see it in video. So I think, he's killing it on the basketball court, and he's killing it here in his fantasy analysis. But Walsh, I honestly think you're spot on here with Jared Goff. Ed, no, I'm not. I'm not cool with him at all, leaving as my QB1. Again, if you play the streaming game as Walsh dove into, different scenario for me. I tend not to play it because I just tend not to be good at streaming quarterbacks, unfortunately. I end up drafting 2 average guys and then never playing the right one. That's more my MO. So, but otherwise, absolutely not for Jared Goff. I think his QB 15, he's fine there because that's kind of where he finished last year. And he could see an uptick here, I think. But like you said, that team is just going to feed Todd Gurley, who is running back number 1 coming off the board. He is arguably the number 1 pick, depending on who you talk to. And Walsh, the division, super interesting because we'll get to David Johnson. But, you look at all these top guys. Here's 2 top guys in the same division that you could argue could go at number 1 if it was your preference in fantasy drafts. So a lot of talent. And I don't really think we need to share a ton on Todd Gurley. I think he's going where he's going. I don't think there's any debate about him being we'll call him a top 3 pick. And I think that's what you alluded to before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anyone you can make an argument for Zeke as number 4, whatever you think about him. But Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, and David Johnson to me are clearly the top 3 picks. I personally like Gurley number 1 out of them, but it's extremely close. I don't have a huge preference. Which is why I said in the last podcast, I think my strategy is try to get that 3rd pick. But yeah, it's easy. They were such a good offense last year. He got so much work. He got over 100 targets. They return all 5 offensive line starters this year. Todd Gurley's a great pick where he's going. Not much more than that.
Perfect. And I'm not interested in any of the backs behind him at all. Are you?
I'm kind of interested to see who kind of emerges, if anyone. I know Malcolm Brown's kind of the favorite to emerge there. John Kelly is a rookie that they brought in. So, anytime you've got someone like Todd Gurley who's going to be getting so much work, that defense is really, really good. You would think if he gets hurt that whoever's behind him is going to get work unless it's a clear committee. So if you see someone emerge behind him as Malcolm Brown will be getting 15 to 18 touches a game on the Rams now that Todd Gurley isn't playing for a couple weeks, that's good to me. So, I don't really like handcuffing too much. I'm not going to tell you who I would knock out or who I would not be drafting towards the end of the draft, but I don't think whoever emerges as the Rams backup running back is a bad pick at the end of the draft.
Fair enough. And that is why Walsh is the best fantasy analyst we got, because I would have just moved on. But no, it's good. That's great feedback. But let's get into the wide receivers, Walsh. And I think in general, I just have a note here I want to add about Brandon Cooks, Cooper Kupp, and Robert Woods. Between the 3, the Rams now have 3 wide receivers who have averaged 6+ targets per game last year in their respective offenses. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this wide receiver core breaks down. Brandon Cooks signs a 5-year deal worth $80 million with the Rams. Coming off the board, wide receiver 23, 4th pick in the 5th round. I actually don't know. I'm trying to see if he's moved at all lately.
Brandon Cooks?
Yeah, I was just looking to see on the draft. He's about set there. He's between 6 and 4.
Okay.
So it's mid-fifth round. It's pretty much where he's been for a while.
Yeah, sorry, I unplugged my microphone or my headphones on accident for a minute. Did you mention that he got a 5-year contract extension today?
I mean, look, Walsh, I know you don't like what I have to say a lot, but, just tuning me out during the podcast is a little bit of a personal attack. So we'll talk off air about it. It's not a big deal. I'll be a little upset tonight. But, Brandon Cooks gets that 5-year deal with $80 million. Good for him.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, man. I slammed my hand down for some reason and just really knocked my headphone jack out. But anyway, do you have an opinion about him, like, at this spot? Because, like, I don't know what to think at all about Brandon Cooks here.
Yeah, I'm torn because, as I looked at that contract today, I think that was the only thing that could flash through my head as I looked at it now, analyzing him. And I was like, man, they just paid him a lot of money.
I mean, they have to want him, right? They have to want him to, like, get a lot of work.
They paid him a ton of money, but it goes back to the argument we talked about before where, they get up big, they're going to run the ball, they're going to feed Todd Gurley. It's kind of why we're like, well, Jared Goff, like, he's fine, but, he's not going to be out there throwing, 553 passes or whatever, So I don't know. I'm kind of looking at the ADPs and who's around him right now, to be honest. And, I mean, you look at wide receivers, you got Golden Tate, Alshon Jeffrey, Jarvis Landry, Chris Hogan, Marvin Jones. I think.
Yeah, I guess that's fair then, right?
I think that's right. I mean, I think you could, it depends how you feel on Tate and Alshon. Like, you can go up to Allen Robinson at 4.9. Like, it really, I think, comes down to preference. I think he's priced right. I don't know how I feel about it, but I think he's priced where he should be based on talent, past performance, what this team is going to do. They're going to win. And based on, even without him there, that stat saying that, the wide receivers average 6+ targets a game. I mean, if he catches 4 of those 6 a game, that's 4 PPR points plus his yardage. He's going to find the end zone. I think he's priced right. I don't know what I'll do with him in drafts until I probably am, like, on the clock, to be at least at this point. I mean, I may feel differently as we get into August a little bit more, but right now I honestly think Brandon Cooks is a guy that I would just decide on in the moment, and that's a gut call, and that's not always something you can quantify here.
Yeah, I think all 3 of these wide receivers are kind of like guys where if I saw them as, like, the next wide receiver on my list of rankings when my pick comes up, I'm kind of, like, panicking and looking to see what other positions, like what tight end is available or, like, what running back is available, because I'm not really in love with any of them. But, like, I guess, like, not that they're a panic pick, but they're kind of a panic pick. My issue with Cooks is that he's had at least 114 targets in the past 3 years, and all 3 of those years were with either Drew Brees or Tom Brady. And he's replacing Sammy Watkins, who had 70 targets last year. And a lot of those were when Robert Woods was injured and not playing. So how do we reconcile those two things? Do we say, oh no, Cooper Kupp's going to get less targets, Robert Woods is going to get less targets, Todd Gurley is going to get less work? Like, I don't think you can confidently say any of those things. So how do we reconcile the fact? And I mean, Brandon Cooks is being drafted way later than he has in the past. He's been a 2nd to 3rd round type guy, but is he going to be a guy you can play every week when he's, number 1, their deep threat, so less consistent week to week, and 2, is maybe going to see 90, 95 targets instead of his 114 or more? It becomes, and he's a guy that we've had trouble playing week to week in the past because he's, a big play guy. So it's a little bit difficult for me to really say that I want to draft him. But I guess if the right situation came up, like when I look at those guys around him, you're right. I don't think he's mispriced. I just don't particularly want him.
Yeah, it's like you said, though. You start dancing around your board where you're like, man, like I already have like 3 running backs because I did that. I got my number 1 wide receiver, but like, is this really what I want to do here? Or do I like want to go for like, if you believe in it, like a Jimmy Graham at tight end, who's literally one
right
after like
exactly what I was going to say. And I think I'm taking Jimmy Graham. And when I'm making that decision, I'm taking Jimmy Graham like every time, unless I already drafted a tight end.
Like you start dancing your board, or you're looking at like, oh man, like, QB, like for us, it's different because QBs fall, but you could start dancing and being like, oh shit, like, like Deshaun Watson's 11-4. Like, are you like, do I really want Russell Wilson? And you overpay for Russell Wilson or some, like, you start looking elsewhere because you can't decide on Brandon Cooks.
Right.
So yeah, I probably won't own any shares of Brandon Cooks, as everyone on the listening probably can already tell, just because I probably will panic elsewhere based on the unknown. And that's a commodity. If you believe that he's going to have a great year, that's a fucking win for you. Or he's going to slide down boards and someone else is going to get a good deal on him. Just isn't going to be me. Out of the other two wide receivers, Walsh, I prefer Robert Woods over Cooper Kupp.
See, I prefer Cooper Kupp.
Interesting.
But I don't think you're wrong necessarily. It's just like I'm kind of perplexed by this whole situation. I mean, Woods would have led the team in targets if it weren't for that late season injury that he had. I don't really know how he's going to be used this year. Kupp, I feel like, is kind of on the upswing of his career as a guy coming into his second year, and he's going to see the majority of the slot work, which is always good for number of targets. He also had a lot more red zone targets, which his number of red zone targets, it kind of indicates a little bit higher of a touchdown total that he ended up with. I know he had a couple bad drops in the end zone, but I'm kind of looking at Cooper Kupp as a candidate for touchdown regression, which is why I'm, preferring him. I don't know if we said this, but Cooper Kupp is currently wide receiver 37 and Robert Woods is wide receiver 38. So you're splitting hairs here. They're both mid-8th rounds. But yeah, I like Cooper Kupp a little bit more. But why did you choose Woods over him?
I think part of it is liking Woods and part of it is the regression / scare on Kupp a little bit. He dropped 7 of 69 catchable balls, which is out of 7. I mean, it's almost 10%. Of good balls there. And I think Robert Woods, like you said, when you extrapolate his being on pace, he was on pace for 75, about 1,050 and 7 touchdowns on 113 targets. So again, I mean, we're projecting and saying, oh, if he stayed healthy, this is what he was on pace for. I think I'm basing a lot more on last year's numbers and where I see that going, and some regression on Cooper Kupp. But again, I have no argument. If that's who you really want, they're literally the same pick. It's just where you want to throw your dart between the two.
Yeah, and I'm trying to look to see who else is going around there too. Like, geez, I mean, Randall Cobb is going right in front. I think I'd rather have him than either of them. You've got Devontae Parker, you've got Jordy Nelson, Robbie Anderson, Marquise Goodwin. I don't know. I'm not going to be owning many Rams wide receivers, I don't think, this year.
Nope, I completely agree. And this is, like I said in the intro, this is a part where it's not as – the division's almost not as sexy on this half, and we're only through one of the two teams on the second side. It's just not. I mean, I don't think they'd look as good in dresses, for that guy that's going to lose and take his pictures in dresses there.
That's true.
He bet wrong on Mitch Trubisky, we think. But, yeah, I agree. I mean, you look at the draft board, and it's just like, Jordy, Cobb. I'll go elsewhere. I probably will not own any Rams. I won't have a shot probably at Todd Gurley in most leagues, so I probably won't own a ton of Rams, which I think is fair to now turn into the tight end conversation where you got Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett. I think if you like one more, it's Gerald Everett for me. But again, I don't think I'm going to own either of them. But I prefer Everett over Higbee.
Everett's not a guy that I'm looking to draft, and Higbee, I think you would be an idiot to draft. But Everett, I think, is at least intriguing. He was the 44th pick last year, was used much more in the passing game than Higbee, despite getting fewer snaps than Higbee. So it's clear they see Higbee as the blocking tight end, Everett as the guy that they would like to have going forward as their receiving tight end. He's talented. I think they could increase his usage this year. But again, where are they taking that usage from? We just talked about how we're not sure how the targets are going to be split among the wide receivers. We know Gurley's not losing usage. So Everett's an intriguing name. Don't draft him.
Fair enough, Walsh. I think you hit the nail on the head. Don't spin the wheel there, guys. Just keep an eye on it. And time comes, maybe you can spin the wheel by week filling or if you're playing the wire, as most of us tight end owners do. But with that, Walsh, we're going to take a quick break. You guys are going to hear from Auction Draft, and we will be right back.
Auction Draft is the ultimate fantasy football auction draft experience. With full season and 5-week seasons available, you get the best of both worlds. It's time to play fantasy football the way it was meant to be played. Visit auctiondraft.net to learn more and save 50% off the 2018 season price with promo code LTFF. We'll see you on the field.
All right, guys, that was Auction Draft. Remember, you can sign up now at auctiondraft.net. Use the promo code LTFF for 50% off your 2018 season. That's right, 50% off. James and the team over there, awesome guys, awesome group, and they're going to take care of you. They want you to have the best auction draft you've ever had, and we have no doubt that they're going to make it happen. But we need to get back to fantasy football, Walsh, and we're going to start with none other than the Cardinals QB situation. I'll call it Sam Bradford coming off the board as undrafted, and Josh Rosen coming off the board as, drumroll, undrafted. So, again, I don't think there's any fantasy. I don't care about either of them at all. Patrick Peterson is quoted as saying that although Sam Bradford is the Cardinals' starting quarterback, Rosen blew his mind during the first week of practice. So Patrick Peterson with great things to say about Josh Rosen.
Yeah, I love Josh Rosen. He was my favorite quarterback coming out of this draft. I think he's extremely good at football, though he might be he's going to make a lot of mistakes. He's going to throw a lot of picks. He tries to force some balls, that sort of thing. But for the purpose of fantasy football this year, both of them are streamers that are not worth drafting. Just keep an eye on matchups, that sort of thing. It's also worth noting, before we get too far into the Cardinals, that Bruce Arians is gone, which is unfortunate. Bruce Arians was kind of one of my favorite coaches because he just kind of threw the ball down the field a lot, really, really fun. Didn't really care too much and was willing to take risks. So with him gone, they're going to have a whole new look for the offense. Steve Wilkes is the new head coach. He's more of a defensive guy. Mike McCoy, who you will know from as the former OC for the Broncos and former head coach for the Chargers, he's going to be their offensive coordinator. Steve Wilkes says they want to run the ball a lot. That makes sense. He's a defensive guy. He's old school and wants to defend and run. So keep that in mind, I guess. I think another thing to keep in mind in general when looking at these quarterbacks and the whole team, the offensive line is probably going to suck. They're not good. They weren't good last year. They didn't really make improvements. So, yeah, I mean, just keep that in mind when if you see a team, like if you're considering streaming Sam Bradford in week 4 or something, and the team that they're playing against has a good pass rush, maybe don't stream Sam Bradford.
There you go, guys. You heard it here first. Look at the matchups. Walsh has got you covered, and he'll have you covered weekly when it comes to streaming because he is our resident streamer, and he always seems to make it work. So shout out there to you, Walsh. But let's talk about,
man.
You got it, man. You kill it. You kill it. So we appreciate the work you do, and so does everybody else because it helps them win. And we're dumb enough. The guys that do the podcast with you are dumb enough to be like, yeah, I just don't agree. And then every week it fucking works out. And we're like, well, Walsh was right again. So one day we will wise up. But for now, we still are the dumb buffoons mocking your streaming calls. But let's
Good word, buffoon.
Yeah, so I throw the vocab in there every once in a while. Try and class this joint up a little bit. But David Johson and Walsh, we talked about how you think he's a top 3 guy. You want the 3rd pick in the draft because it leaves you Bell, Gurley, or David Johson. He's recovered from his wrist injury. He's back healthy. They want to run the hell out of the ball. I don't really think you need to give a ton more here on David Johson.
No, I'm right there with you. I think the cons that people will bring up are the ones that I just brought up. The offensive line is bad, and they changed the coach. So he excelled with Bruce Arians. Is it still going to work out? Those are valid concerns. I definitely understand why you would think those. But just in case you guys forgot, let me remind you just how good and just how prolific David Johson was in 2016 when he was healthy. Because having him miss the entire season last year, I think it's easy to forget. In 2016, David Johson had 2,118 yards from scrimmage and 20 touchdowns. He accomplished those numbers with while receiving 120 targets out of the backfield. And yeah, those are insane numbers. If you're not reacting to those, just like how did he do those things? I don't know what planet you're from, because in the modern NFL, those are not numbers that a running back gets pretty often. So David Johnson's an elite talent. Yes, the system's different. Yes, the offensive line is bad. That doesn't change the fact that he's an incredible running back.
Completely agreed. I have nothing further to add, Your Honor. But the backs behind him, Walsh, Elijah Penny, Chase Edmonds, both coming out undrafted. Do you care? Do you think either of them are talented enough to take this role and run with it? God forbid there's another David Johnson injury here.
No, I think it'll be a committee type of thing. If David Johnson were to get hurt, there's a couple like scat pass catching backs back there. I think TJ Logan is one of them. I forget the other guy's name. Chase Edmonds is kind of notable because he's a rookie, 4th rounder out of Fordham, actually. So good guy. Went to college in the Bronx. We like that. He's likely to be their primary backup, but he won't be a 3 down type guy. Like I said, they have a couple of pass catchers, and then Elijah Penny is a 235-pound short yardage specialist. So if David Johnson goes down, Chase Edmonds is the primary back, and he's not going to get the goal line work or the passing down back. So don't think about any of them.
Fair enough. With a bad O-line, and they're not David Johnson. So kind of icing on the cake.
Pretty much.
All right, well, let's talk wide receivers, and we'll kick it off with none other than Larry Fitzgerald, Old Faithful, we'll say. Coming off the board at wide receiver 15, 9th pick here in the 3rd round. I'm actually just pulling up Fantasy Football Calculator because I don't think I realized how far up draft boards he's actually is. I expect
he's going ahead of Stephon Diggs.
Yeah. So here's what I'll say on Larry Fitzgerald as I look at the receivers, the situation around him, I'll call it. I love Larry Fitzgerald. He's finished inside the top 12 in PPR scoring for 3 years in a row and 7 times since 2008 while only missing 2 games during that stretch. I think he's overpriced. I love Larry Fitzgerald. I think he's going to perform, but I think he's almost at his ceiling. You know, you're buying him pretty high. I expected him to be a couple rounds lower. I think people tend to get down on Fitz because he's old and whatever, but I still expected to be able to pay way less for Fitz. I wouldn't pay for him at 3.9.
Interesting. See, I'm all about him right there, but I will also qualify that by saying that I am constantly wrong on him, whether it's game to game, season to season. I have never had the correct Larry Fitzgerald take in like my history of playing fantasy football. That being said, I really like him this year. I would honestly take him over like Tyreek Hill. I might take him over Adam Thielen and T.Y. Hilton, Josh Gordon. The guy, like, he might be my wide receiver 11.
Wow.
But the reason I say that is because who the hell else are they throwing to on this offense? You know, Fitzgerald is going to eat targets. We know if Sam Bradford's the quarterback, that Sam Bradford has historically loved slot receivers. His most productive receiver in St. Louis was Danny Amendola out of the slot. His most productive receiver in Philly was Jordan Matthews out of the slot. His most productive receiver in Minnesota was Stephon Diggs, who played the majority of his snaps out of the slot. So, I mean, to me, slot receiver is where it's at in terms of Sam Bradford being the quarterback. Larry Fitzgerald has been incredible, doesn't really show any signs of slowing down, even though he's 35 years old. I'm all over Larry Fitzgerald, but I am always wrong about Larry Fitzgerald, so take that for what you will.
Fair enough. I mean, look, I love Larry Fitzgerald. I think I played him against you, and he worked out for me multiple times last year.
You and I have had multiple DFS matchups hinge on Larry Fitzgerald, whether it's him putting up a lot of points for you or putting up like 4 points for me. I have lost so many DFS matchups to you based on Larry Fitzgerald.
Oh, Larry Fitz, you have been good to me in more ways than one. But I think Christian Kirk is an interesting guy here for, again, it's essentially a free pick. I think he contributes more for the offense or the team as a whole, probably on returning punts and kickoffs and special teams. But I also think he's someone that may be able to slide into that slot position and step in and help contribute there. So, I don't know. I mean, they've got J.J. Nelson, they've got Bryce Butler, Chad Williams. Like, I don't know who necessarily steps in. He is a rookie, Christian Kirk. So, but I think at his price, he could be interesting to watch and see if he steps into that slot role there. With Bradford throwing the ball his way a little bit. So, not really a reason I'm necessarily down on Fitz, but I think he could be interesting, Christian Kirk.
That's fair. And I think there is, if you think that Kirk can step into that role and maybe put Fitz outside a little bit, that definitely makes a ton of sense. In my head, my line of thinking was Fitz is in the slot. That's not changing. Christian Kirk profiles as a slot receiver, and they're going to have to kick him outside where he's not used to playing. So in my head, again, it really just depends on how you see it. Neither one of those takes is right. It's just sort of different hypotheticals happening. Totally. If my hypothetical happens, we saw what happened when the Eagles tried to put Nelson Aguilar, who's a slot receiver, on the outside. He was the worst receiver in football for 2 years straight. Yes. So I don't really see any reason to draft Christian Kirk, working under the assumption that he's not going to be able to run out of the slot this year.
Totally fair. Do you care about Chad Williams, Bryce Butler, or J.J. Nelson?
I love Bryce Butler. That should be apparent to anyone who's ever listened to the podcast before. With all three of these guys, I'm watching the preseason closely to see who's getting the snaps because there's a lot of targets available there. John Brown and Jaron Brown combined for 114 targets last year in this offense. They do want to run the ball more, so who knows if that really happens or if it's actually that many targets. But even if it's 90 targets, they got to go somewhere. If one of these guys can really step into this role that I don't think Christian Kirk is going to be able to fill, then they might have some sort of fantasy value. And I really hope it's Bryce Butler because that guy is incredible and is constantly getting shafted on playing time.
Oh, Bryce Butler. You always get the raw end of the stick, unfortunately. So we'll see if Christian Kirk steals it from you again or if this is your year and, shall I say, Walsh's year. Because he's a very happy man watching Fitz on the slot and Bryce Butler coming in and getting the snaps and playing time he deserves. Walsh, tight end, Ricky Seals-Jones, tight end 16, 11th pick in the 13th round. One, I want no part of him. Spin the wheel elsewhere. Two, sleeper bot, breaking news. Ricky Seals-Jones was arrested and charged with assault, disorderly conduct.
When did this happen?
It just broke. Disorderly conduct and criminal trespassing in Scottsdale, Arizona this past Saturday.
Wow.
That I think that sums it up on Ricky Seals-Jones.
Yeah, I was going to say keep an eye on his preseason and see how many snaps he's getting because he had a couple multi-touchdown games last year, even though he only got 28 targets. But yeah, never mind.
His preseason is going to look a little bit different than we thought coming into the podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks to the breaking news update there on Ricky Seals-Jones. So, again, we'll see. We know the No Fun League likes to crack down on things, whether they're convicted, but some serious charges. So we'll see what happens. Spin that wheel, folks, just elsewhere, not here in Arizona right now with Ricky Seals-Jones. Walsh, do you have anything else here for the fine, good fans?
No, man, I'm all set.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it here for us on the NFC West preview. Wraps up part one and part two. If you haven't listened to part one, pause this one, go back, or just end this one. It's pretty much over. Go back, listen to part one, and make sure you get all the info you guys need. We dove super deep there. Again, a sexier first half of the division than the second half. But they both need their love and attention here from the LTFF crew. But we were coming to you live from Jersey, guys. This is a rare thing here coming from Walsh. So it has been my pleasure, Walsh, to be here with you in Jersey. But we are Let's Talk Fantasy Football, and we will catch you on the flip side.
This has been Let's Talk Fantasy Football. Thanks for listening.